Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from the New York Rise tournament of 1916. It's a game between Jacob Carl Rosenthal and Raul Capablanca. Again, I'm forced to use a photo of the hoodie guy. I was unable to find a photo, which is quite odd, as Mr. Rosenthal was the champion of the Manhattan Chess Club in 1911 and the New York State champion in 1912. And he is quite a strong player. He did quite well in this tournament, but now he faces the Cuban legend Raul Capablanca, who is so far 8-8. So 8 wins in a row. This is round 9. Let's see how Mr. Rosenthal does against Capablanca. It's a wonderful game. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So let's just dive straight into it. Rosenthal opens the game with d4. We have d5, knight to f3, knight to f6, c4, and d6. We enter the Queen's Gambit declined. Knight to c3 by Rosenthal, knight bd7 by Capablanca, and e3. And here bishop to d6. You could also go for bishop to e7, but bishop to d6 is a bit more active move, but it does invite white to grab more space with c5, which Rosenthal does. We have c5, bishop now has to go back, we have bishop to e7, and now b4, just creating a massive pawn chain on the queen side. We have c6, and now comes a3, so the pawn chain is very nicely cemented there. We have queen to c7 by Capablanca. The knight and queen now control the e5 square, and Capablanca hopes, well, if he can get this e5 move in the game early on, that he shouldn't have problems equalizing this game. Bishop to b2 by white. We have castles by Capablanca, and now bishop to d3. White is now ready to castle, but as white didn't really do anything to prevent Capablanca from pushing e5, Capablanca now does it. We have e5, and it's a nice principled move. The white king is still in the center. If you can push e5, get rid of your backwards pawn, you should always do it. The threat, of course, e4, winning the piece, so white must react to this pawn push. D captures on e5, with knight captures on e5, knight captures, queen captures, and there are no useful discoveries. You can't really do anything. Knight b5, queen just goes back, so it doesn't really do anything. So here, queen to c2, putting pressure on the h7 pawn, and Capablanca now moves the queen, so no nasty discoveries will be possible in the future. Queen to h5. Queen g5 is interesting, going after the g2 pawn, but it doesn't really do anything. White can just give up the g2 pawn, and you will not be able to grab it. If you grab it, then do you see how white takes advantage of this? Not rook to g1 right away, but first the bishop captures on h7. This is the problem. Now white can't capture it, black can capture it, because if black captures, only now rook to g1, as now the bishop and rook are nicely connected towards the g7 pawn, and here black must part with the queen. If you don't, if you play queen h3, then it's a very standard mating idea. It's a forced mate in 7, but you know, if you're interested in learning it, as you will often see it in your own games, I imagine, feel free to pause the video and try to find this forced mating sequence. I'll give you a couple of seconds if you're interested in trying. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent mater in 7, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, of course, the first move is rook to g7, but now you have to think of the windmills. King to h8, and now first rook captures on h7, delivering check with the bishop and also with the rook, and the queen is protecting the rook, so the king has to move. It's the only move. And now you don't capture the queen, you're not interested in that, you're going for checkmate. Back rook g7, you force the king back to the h8 square, and now rook captures on f7 check, freeing the g6 square for the white queen. And now you don't really have any good moves. You have to block, then bishop captures, you have to block again, bishop captures, and finally after the king moves, now the g6 square is free for the white queen, and here the queen delivers checkmate. So a very nice checkmate. But it's a very nice sequence that never actually happened, because Capablanca went queen to h5. Knight to e2 by white. We have knight to e8. The knight from e8 will be guarding the g7 pawn very nicely. Also f5 can be played if needed. And here white has to make a choice. Does he want to go for castles and play a fairly safe game, or does he want to go for the queen side castle and play an opposite side castles game, where it will be very sharp, because white can now start an attack on the king side. You don't have to be worried about pushing the pawns in front of your king, but Capablanca will now freely attack white's king on the queen side. So Capablanca does exactly that. He wastes no time. He goes a5. He wants to bust open the pawn structure on the queen side, and white doesn't waste time either. We have h4. Capablanca goes h captures on b4, we have a captures on b4, and now bishop to f6, just opposing this bishop, as it is a very strong piece from white, but white isn't interested in trading. So knight to d4, and you don't really have any options of dislodging this knight from d4. So for the moment, the tension remains. We have knight to c7. The knight is no longer needed, as the dark square bishop from white isn't really a threat towards the g7 square anymore. So now the knight can be transferred either to e6 or b5, depending on what white plays. White, again, doesn't waste time. Rosenthal goes for f3, prepares g4, as the bishop is now nicely placed on f6. g4, g5 could be a very nice advancement. And now queen to h6, not allowing g4 to come with a tempo, and also threatening the e3 pawn, which is a backwards pawn, so now it is a weakness. Rosenthal defends it. We have queen to d2, and now rook to e8, putting more pressure towards the e3 pawn. We have rook d to e1, and now rook to a2 by Capablanca. A very nice move, as it doesn't allow the bishop to move, and also it grabs a lot of space. It's a very active rook, but Rosenthal doesn't allow it to remain there. First, bishop to b1, and here an interesting move by Capablanca, bishop captures on d4. And now if you capture the rook on a2, then Capablanca's idea was bishop captures on e3. And now if you don't want to lose the queen, you have to give the rook back. Rook captures, and Capablanca would have a very nice game here. And pretty much he would have stopped white's attack. So Rosenthal doesn't allow this. He doesn't go for bishop captures on a2. Instead, he goes for bishop captures on, sorry, not bishop captures, queen captures on d4. Bishop captures would be just terrible, as you would lose the queen. And now the rook has to move. We have rook to a4, and now bishop to c2, again forcing the rook to move even further back. Now, if rook to a2, then king b1, you will just force it back, so there's no point in even trying. Capablanca has to go back with the rook to a8, and now Rosenthal repelled Capablanca's attack on the queen side. Both of the bishops are nicely slicing over to the king side, and the pawns are ready to be pushed on the king side as well. So, without further ado, g4. We have knight to b5, getting the knight deeper into the position while attacking the queen. Queen to d3, and now rook to f8. Capablanca is now ready to push f5, so he can f5, so he can activate his light square bishop. And here we have rook e to g1. This move is a bit too slow. You should immediately go for h5, g5, because after rook e to g1, which was played, Capablanca just returns rook to e8. Puts pressure towards the e3 pawn, and now white has to waste a move once again. So rook to e1, and now bishop to d7, just developing a piece, as there really isn't a better way to develop it. And here white plays a really an awesome move. It's h5, preparing g5. And here Capablanca has to figure out how to prevent g5. In the game, Capablanca played f5, but this is not enough. The correct move is f6. You have to prevent g5. But Capablanca played f5, as the bishop now also guards the f5 square, but this simply doesn't work. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the best idea for white in this position, and if you're interested, do take your time. It's really a complicated idea, which requires a lot of thought, so if you have the time, do check it out. I'll give you a couple of seconds to decide while I have a nice sip of my water. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you've just created an amazing attack that never actually happened in the game. In the game, Rosenthal played G captures on f5, but for those of you who were able to play a better move, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the correct move is g5, and it's a very complicated move because you're playing against Capablanca, who is 8 in 8, and you have a better position, but one little slip, and you could just be one more in a row. You could be a 9 in 9, so to say. But the g5 is deadly because here Capablanca would have two options: queen captures or queen to e6. So let's explore the obvious one first. If queen captures on g5, then of course rook h to g1 attacks the queen and connects. The rook is now attacking the g7 square and also the bishop here. And now after you move the queen, let's say queen h6, now comes rook captures with check. And now if you go king to h8, then all sorts of nasty discoveries are possible. White can just win the queen and the game. So you have to go king to f8. Or you can just capture the rook with the queen, but then again you're down a queen. So here rook captures on d7. The threat is bishop to g7 check, winning the queen. And after the queen moves, let's say queen h5, now you go bishop to g7, either way, king has to go to g8, and now just rook to g1. And we have this beautiful position where black has no good move. Any move you make doesn't really make sense, and white can just either grab this pawn, white can grab this pawn, be up material. If you play any move that puts your piece on a dark square, white can just make any sort of discovery and win that piece. So white is completely winning in this position. So obviously after g5 you cannot capture the pawn. You have to go queen to e6. But now it's where it becomes complicated. Most likely Rosenthal saw that the g5 queen captures doesn't work. But here, if he found the move e4, then I'm sure he would have gone for g5. But it's a really, it's not complicated once you know it's there. But if you don't, you're playing Capablanca, you're not going to go for this. But after f captures, d captures, and queen captures, we have queen captures, bishop captures. Now you see the point. And it's not all that difficult to calculate this. It's a few captures. And now you see that white is left with a powerful bishop pair. And it doesn't really matter what black plays. Any move that black plays, let's say you try to activate the knight, h6 is coming. And now you see the problem. The bishop pair is too strong. You can either capture, which doesn't make really a lot of sense, or you can go g6, and now white's idea is bishop captures on g6, where if you capture, then just h7 wins the game, king f7, now you bring a knight into the game, you're just up material, so black would have to give up the exchange, and now, well, there's really not much to do against rook to h7. So this is, again, completely winning for white. And on the other hand, after bishop captures, you could also go for rook captures rook first, and then after rook captures only then capture the bishop. But again, rook to e7 just attacks the two pieces, and there's no defense against h7 check. The king has to go away, and then h8 brings another queen into the game. Again, completely winning. Let's say king f8, you just capture a piece, and whatever you do, h7, h8 is coming. So, unfortunately for Rosenthal, after Capablanca's f5, he didn't find g5. But, it's just luck of the strong, or fortune favors the strong, as they say. Here he played g captures on f5, but it's not a blunder or anything. White still remains with a better position. But here Capablanca played d4, now attacking the pinned pawn as the queen from h8 connects with the king on c1, and also the rook is attacking the e3 pawn. And here Jacob Carl Rosenthal played king to b1. And it was in this position on move 31 that Jacob Carl Rosenthal and Raul Capablanca agreed to a draw. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the information on who offered the draw, but it is a rule in chess that you offer a draw after you've made your move. Now, players often agree to draws without, following this rule, but I don't know. If I had to guess, it's hard to guess. Either Rosenthal was very excited that he has a better position against Capablanca, and he was just hoping not to lose the game, as everyone else in the tournament so far lost to Capablanca. So maybe he played king b1, offered a draw, and Capablanca was like, yeah, I'll take that draw. Or Capablanca knew that he was losing, and he offered the draw to Rosenthal, and Rosenthal just accepted it as, it's a very nice draw against such a strong player. But even after king to b1, Rosenthal could have just kept playing, because there's no good way for black to win this game. Of course, that's easy to say. When you play against Capablanca, there's always ways to lose the game. But here, even if you just trade down, let's say rook captures on e3, rook captures, queen captures on e3, queen captures, and d captures. Now, yes, Capablanca does have a very strong pass pawn. The problem is, rook to g1, there's no good way to defend the g7 pawn. White's bishop pair once again proves too strong. Here, let's say king f8, bishop captures on g7 check, king f7, or not king a8, king to f7, bishop to b3 check. And now you've created a path for your pass pawn. Here, king to e8, and now f6. The threat is f7, f8, and here, okay, you can block it. Knight c3 check, king can move, king b2, and now knight d5 blocks the bishop's control of the f7 square, but then just bishop c2, you can go and grab this pawn, start pushing your h pawn. Black might be able to hold this, especially if Capablanca is playing, but there's no way for white to lose here. So it's very, very strange that white would accept a draw here. Maybe, okay, it's hard to say. Maybe he accepted it, maybe he offered it, and then Capablanca accepted it. I don't know. Maybe if you have a nice theory, or maybe you have an exact like fact what happened here, do share in the comments below. As it is strange, but it is a wonderful game, and especially after this f5, the complications that arise after g5 is played, it's just insane. But yeah, after this king to b1 move, the players agreed to a draw, and well, this is the first setback for Capablanca in this tournament. 8 wins in a row, then this draw against Jacob Karl Rosenthal. But, you know, still having a great tournament, and an excellent game for Jacob Karl Rosenthal, who could have, well, if he pushed g5, this would probably be Rosenthal's immortal, but, you know, it just wasn't meant to be. So yeah, that's it for this game. I also have a special announcement. I have a shout out to make to a certain Johannes for his birthday. So happy birthday, Johannes! There we have it. This is Johannes. His girlfriend sent me this photo to wish you a happy birthday. So I do hope you had a great birthday. It was yesterday. And here, if you really zoom in to this photo, there are a lot of books in the background. And one of the books is titled Life is Sweet. So indeed, if you enjoyed chess this much, life certainly is sweet. So really, really do hope you had an excellent birthday and that you will have an excellent life, man. So there we have it. And also, I do owe you the story of the couch. So if you're interested, it's not a very long story. It's not an exciting story. But I bought the new couch, as you can see, the one back there, because the old one was really just old. It's prehistoric. And well, I ordered the new one, and they said, okay, it will arrive in a week. And then I got rid of the old one, and I said, okay, I mean, I can be without a couch for a few days. And then after that week passed, they didn't even contact me. They haven't notified me or anything. And then the couch just wasn't delivered. And then after I contacted them, they said, yeah, we're not going to deliver it. And I was like, what's the idea here? And they were like, yeah, we're just too busy. And okay, I was like, so when will you deliver it? And they said, well, we're gonna deliver it a week from now. And so I said, okay, I mean, there's no way in fighting this. I said, oh, all right, I will wait for yet another week without a couch in my apartment. And then another week passed, and they still haven't delivered it. And then they said it will arrive tomorrow. And okay, tomorrow I wasn't at my home. I had to drive my mother to the hospital, and the couch did arrive, but the couch is over 100 kilograms, and well, they only sent one person to bring it up to my apartment. And I specifically asked when I bought them, I mean, will enough people deliver the couch? And they said, yeah, sure, of course. I mean, of course, at least 2 people will deliver it. And then I wasn't at home. Only one person came, and then luckily my girlfriend was home. They told her that either she will help them carry the couch or they will return the couch to where it came from. And then, okay, somehow they managed to bring the house in there. I managed to set it up and everything, and it's just one very, how to say, it was just a very unpleasant experience. And I will not name this company that I ordered it from, even though I'd want to, so you don't make the same mistake as me. But I'm not going to do it, as you know. I don't know. I just decided not to do it. But that's the story behind the couch. And finally, it's here, and you know, it's a very nice couch. I enjoy it. Medo enjoys it. My girlfriend enjoys it. So I'm very happy about that. But yeah, that's the story behind the couch. Sorry if you expected some really, you know, spectacular story, but you know, to me it was very painful. But yeah, once again, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Anthony Cox, Mikhail Rutko, Rafael Quintero Godinez, Christopher Fernandez, and Anastasios Tsurnos for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, you know, with everything that follows. And yeah, thank you all. I'll see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.